we're looking at a shifting landscape of what attendees expect.
They're owning their personal time more. And these conferences that always have started on a Sunday, they need to start on Monday now. But people have options now. They are invited to 2, 3, or 4 things that are gonna cover and fill their cup in the same ways. Think about what are gonna really drive attendance.
You're not able to attend every trade show or every conference or every industry event. So you have to be really, strategic in how you make those decisions.
I showed up to the event. The venue was closed. It did not exist.
All right, guys, so we're talking a little bit today about the industry events that we all kind of fill up our calendar. We know that they're out there, but we're really talking about what is really impacting our attendance, but also our clients' attendance to these industry events, to these opportunities that we're developing in conjunction with these industry events. How are we really building out, the opportunity for them to attend, and what's really informing their decisions to make those decisions of whether or not to show up?
I think the education point is big. I think what attendees are going to actually learn when they're there, what speakers are there, and I think also knowing what attendees are also going to show up. Like, do you know there's people that you really want to network with that are going to this, that you're like, okay, I need to talk to that person, so I'm going to this event as well. I think those are big. Education and who are you going to see?
Who's going to be in the room?
And then how can you plan for the unpredictable moments around those, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that there's a lot of little things that happen every time we plan an event that create, those pivot moments, and prepare in advance for those. They're inevitably going to happen.
What are some of the micro versus macro moments that really drive decisions when it comes to event planners and why they're attending conferences or why they're attending networking opportunities?
I just think that there's unpredictable individual moments that are happening constantly, whether it's, an event where there's a traffic jam outside and now your attendees can't get to it, which happened last week, right?
Yes. Four cars.
Right? 4-car pile up, and all of a sudden everyone turns around and they don't show up anymore. So I think it's the little moments. I mean, there's the macroeconomic moments around the government shutdowns and things like that, but it's it rained really hard that night and your local audience didn't show up because they didn't want to leave their houses because they all work from home now. That's not something we would have dealt with years ago, but we're dealing with it now in how we need to plan our events. We need to be flexible. We need to think about those things. It's like valet parking is so much more important because people aren't used to driving to the office. They're not using public transportation as often, and knowing your audience is really important to know where they're going to see value in coming to your event. Is it because they know they have an easy in and out moment, or is it because the timing of it is more effective for their work schedule, or if it's not a reception and it's a 3 or 4 day conference, is it a destination that's easy to get to that time of year? Are there a lot of direct flights? Are there weather challenges that they need to be aware of, and say a northern destination in Q1, for example, right? So I think there's just so many little unpredictable moments that we have to just always have in the back of our heads. I mean, it rains in the desert. It does. You always need a rain plan no matter what. Yeah. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. I think those kind of macro versus micro is a really interesting perspective. And I'm kind of curious too. I mean, when we're talking about those client expectations, right? What are we seeing those shifts being? I think the interesting thing that you said about, changing, obviously, the way we approach our events because people are working from home and anticipating that they are going to be coming from their home offices, and that may impact their attendance. That also impacts how they're going to travel, right? We're looking at, event planners right now that are maybe sending their attendees to different conferences based on where they're based out of from a home office perspective. So what are event planners kind of facing in terms of that uncertainty, or how do they navigate those conversations?
I think it's important to really be solution-minded oriented, where you're always looking to, okay, if plan A doesn't succeed, where's plan B and where's plan C? So if it does rain and our attendees are not wanting to go, what can we do to mitigate that? Where it's, like you said, valet parking. Can we do a stipend where you do Spot Hero and you get a QR code and it's cheaper for you to park, and things of that nature that can make your attendees feel like, okay, I'm covered. Even if it is raining cats and dogs or there's a 4-car pileup, I still feel comfortable enough to be like, okay, I can still join at this event and not feel like I'm getting into a tough situation.
I think too, to add to that, there's a newer dynamic around personal time, right? People are looking for, they're owning their personal time more, right? And these conferences that always have started on a Sunday, they need to start on Monday now. Like the trend, and I know, hotels might not be happy for me to say that because they want that block to fill on that Sunday
they want that
night.
weekend revenue.
And I hear them, I do, because the revenue is important and the social events typically, spit out on a Sunday and they need to load in with something corporate on a Sunday afternoon. But people are less likely to show up for a Sunday event now than they were 5 or 10 years ago. They are, being more sacred with their time with their family. They're being more sacred with their, well-being. And I think too, if somebody offered me, I could go to 2 different conferences this month. One's going to start on a Sunday and one's going to start on a Monday. It really might impact my decision. Obviously, the education, the networking, and the other goals that I'm trying to accomplish at that convention, but people have options now. They are invited to 2, 3, or 4 things that are going to cover and fill their cup in the same ways. So think about what are going to really drive attendance and how do you drive the data around that information to use it when you go to your stakeholders or when you go to the hotel and you need to negotiate to do a soft night on Sunday so that you can, maximize your spend on Monday. So I think that there's a data element to it as well too. We're in a year where it's so hard to take data and apply it because everything is shifting. To your point of this whole conversation, right? And how do we actually take this year's data, which is sort of the new normal, and apply that to next year? And I think that's what we need to be focused on now because we can only move forward.
I think that's a valid point, right? We're looking at a shifting landscape of what attendees expect. And again, I think we hear it all the time, right? We're kind of being told to be a little bit more selective with what we choose to do. You're not able to attend every trade show or every conference or every, industry event. So you have to be really, strategic in how you make those decisions. So I think it's interesting for me, and I'd love to hear your perspective of how do event planners go about kind of making those conversations and those convincing arguments about what's valuable to attend, and where do they draw the line of like what is really going to be important to them? How do they kind of decide on those things? What would you offer that advice to a planner that's looking at the calendar of events coming up in 2026?
So I'll start because I think that, some conferences do a great job of providing people with some of those tools. So especially the more junior or mid-level planners to be able to say to their bosses, this is the value I'm going to get out of an organization or attending a conference. A conference like PCMA, they actually have a whole section to their convention around, like the information you need to take internally to get yourself approved to attend. Now, I also think that people have choices and there's more out there for them to attend than there ever was before. So how do you justify one conference over a different conference when a lot of those reasons are the same for both? Can be really driven around cost. Which ones are hosted? Which ones are a completely hosted experience? Which ones have, heavily non-hosted elements to them? So if you're sending your team, you could send 4 people maybe to the hosted thing, or you can only send 1 person to the non-hosted thing, right? So maybe it's a bigger conversation around how to budget for your team and making those decisions in advance. And then when those pop-up moments happen, how to look at, okay, where are we going to see value, or where is there an opportunity for us to be hosted in some capacity where we don't have to necessarily spend a huge fortune to really get eyes and ears on a new conference, because that's what's happening is we're getting new conferences on our plate every year.
Yeah.
I've got 3 or 4 this year that I've never attended before, but I'm investing in because I believe that the people I used to see at the traditional conferences aren't going anymore. They're going to these new ones, and we've got to keep up with the times and see if they work, and also create our own new events in order to keep our clients and attendees engaged.
Yeah. I think also like a good piece of it is the education piece. Like, what are you going to be taking out of each conference? So if one conference has different sections and different keynote speakers of things that you're trying to get into, like event marketing, and maybe you want to highlight that, maybe your job is more keyed into that. I think that's kind of that power to say, okay, this conference is maybe better for me versus another conference that could be focused on, execution of events where, as an event marketer, that's not something you're going to necessarily want or need education on more so. So I think the education piece and like what is actually being trained and taught if they're released. I know the schedules sometimes don't come out as quickly as we want them to come out, But I think that's a great piece of it, is what are you going to actually learn from that conference?
Yeah. And I think that's interesting too, about this kind of expanding perspective of what kind of classifies as a conference that's beneficial for an event planner to attend.
Right.
It used to be very traditional focus. You kind of had your kind of key conference
Marquee
areas
events.
and marketing areas marquee areas that you knew that you wanted to attend. And now we're seeing it kind of spill over into like experiential marketing, into the
Leadership
leadership,
conferences.
kind of this kind of technology. There's all this kind of different emphasis of where you could actually learn and capitalize on something that's maybe a little bit niche and a little bit outside of those kind of marquee events, those cornerstone ones. So I think it's really interesting that you brought that up.
And let's get specific, right?
Yeah,
because
sure.
at the end of the day, we are, event planners attending conferences. So some of the conferences that I, am focused on this year, and trying new and also resting my laurels on. So PCMA kicking off the year, that is really the start of the year for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I attended it for many years. I was a chapter president, all that good stuff. Then I stopped going for a couple of years. And this year I said, okay, I'm going to try it again. Not because it wasn't good for a couple of years, but because I sort of had fatigue of starting my year that way. And I wanted to try to start my year a different way. So PCMA being a big one that I think is continuously on the radar, but it goes often on the radar for our company, which is kind of interesting. And then ELX is another event leaders exchange, and really excited. We're going to be featuring some ELX content coming down the pipe.
Yeah.
And what I think is interesting about the event leaders exchange is that they require, as part of their membership, a lot of things to become a member, but you have to attend in person one of their events. You can't just be a passive member. You actually have to show up for something. And I think that's really important, right? It's the face-to-face meetings. So I'm going to show up for that, because we're going to show up for everything for that.
Yeah, love it.
Because we've invested in that partnership. Another one that we hadn't gone to in the past that we're going to go to this year is CVET Connect, and investing in our technology partners. To your point about experiential marketing, we'll be at SEMA this year, which is a spinoff of PCMA, or a partner with PCMA in the experiential marketing field. We always love to be at IMEX, but is IMEX going to be the 85-person Cohere audience that we had last year? No, it's not.
And
right?
that's okay, right?
Yeah. And we're still gonna have a very large presence there, but how we approach IMEX this year is gonna look very different than what it did last year. There's some other FICP things that we've done traditionally that we'll continue to do because we see value in those. But they're smaller, they have a Fuel Forward event in New York City that we wouldn't always attend, but we're going to try this year. I think there's a couple of other shows that are still being talked about. We haven't even made decisions on, even though we're in the middle of the year at this point, right? And that's kind of fun, right? To be able to be a little bit flexible and fluid on our vision and where we're going and where our clients are showing up. We do a lot with the Legal Summit. We do a lot with a lot of the different hotel groups and their client bases. So whether it's Marriott or Alhai or Preferred Hotels, right? Like, we try to align with where our clients are going, because asking them to come to a whole nother event is a lot more challenging than just partnering with a hotel partner on an event. So I think there's probably upwards of 100 events across the country that Cohere is going to have our name on, that are much more of those micro niche events that are aligned to particular properties, particular brands, and particular segments in the marketplace.
I love that you mentioned the fact that you don't have to have your entire calendar scheduled at the beginning of the year.
Right.
I think that can be intimidating, right?
Yeah.
As an event planner, especially, someone that's maybe new to the event circuit.
Definitely.
Of kind of the planner circuit of kind of where they want to attend and where they want to spend their time.
Yeah.
It's okay to walk in and say, I know these key shows that I want to go to, but I'm going to fill the rest based on what I'm really hearing about the attendance, about the leadership opportunities, the networking opportunities, the education. Those kind of things continue to develop and things may pop up. So I think it's helpful to always kind of have something in your back pocket in terms of where you might want to attend or may want to pivot as you go into the year. So as someone that's, kind of up and coming in the events industry, what are you most looking forward to when it comes to getting yourself out there from a networking perspective in the industry events this year? What is kind of really capturing your attention?
Gosh, that's a great question. I feel like it's all about building relationships with the trusted vendors and like the venues and hotel partners that we have. As you guys know, I'm transitioning down to Tampa, which is a big change from being in DC and like growing kind of a new market down there and sharing a lot of that love. So I think that's like high on my list is I just want to make sure I have a huge book of people that I trust, that the clients trust, that we can go back to all the time. And I think being here at PCMA and like being involved in the networking, that's where you get that from. Like, that's where you start building those relationships of, hey, I'm going to be down there. Are you going to be down there? Can we get coffee? Can we learn more about how we can partner together? I think is huge right now.
Yeah, setting those intentions are kind of what you want to get out
manifesting.
of each.
Manifesting,
if you will.
Yeah.
No, I love that idea. So I guess, my biggest question is, what are you most excited about that you're attending this year? If you could say one thing, that one conference that you're attending or one show that you're attending, is there one that's really standing out to you from a planner perspective that you're like, this is going to be the thing that's going to really provide the most ROI?
That's a tough question because...
a loaded question, if you will.
It's a loaded question because I am really excited about a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I think what I'm most excited about is just meeting new people at each of those. I think what's great is that I feel like there's going to be different audiences at everything, and where I can really start playing a little bit with what's working and what's not working based on each one, that I can really lean into as I build out the year, right? And I think I can't pick one. I'm going to be honest with you. I can't pick one, as biased as I'd like to be. I'm excited about ELX because it's new and interesting. I feel that is definitely where my curiosity lives right now. But what I feel most excited about is like the bespoke moments that we're going to create around all these different events, whether it's in partnership with another organization or truly just like these smaller roundtable moments that are going to come from the alignments that we make to better our organization down the road. Like, I want to hear what people like about working with us and what people are seeing more opportunity than we're currently capturing. And the only way to do that is to meet with new people that I haven't met before, because I already have the ear of the same people, and I need new perspectives, especially as we've kind of opened this landscape into a new company where we're really focused on creative and we're really focused on the coverage that we have around the U.S. So I'm really excited, truly not about the individual events, but about the people and the individuals that I've only, seen in passing that I could really build a relationship with.
Yeah. So what would you say to an event planner that's looking to attend some of these shows? What would you say the key things to evaluate from an ROI perspective that they should be taking into consideration? I mean, obviously we're talking about, leads and opportunities that you develop in terms of, programs that you might execute in the future. But what are some of the things that you would say to a planner that are really important to think about?
Well, I would first off ask them, what's your goals, right? Because your individual goal, Sam, might be to be focused on the education. Like, you are at a point in your career where every little bit of information you can soak up, you're a sponge for, right? And that's so valuable to you, where I'm here to network, right? And whether I make it to an education, that's a bonus. But I truly believe that the networking moments here are what I'm here for. And so when I think about the answer to your question, I think about having a very direct conversation about what do you want out of an event, and that might drive the decision, should you be at this event or that event, because some of them have more investment in those different places.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I think that as event planners, if we think about what we might want to attend and why we're making the decisions on these events, we need to remember that as we plan every single event that we're planning. This is how and why people are showing up for these events, and whether it's doctors or lawyers or, engineers, what are they showing up for? And that's where the money needs to be invested. That's where the time needs to be spent in the planning. And that's where the data needs to be placed on measuring, ROI, KPIs, impact, and so forth. So I think sometimes we get sort of stuck on what we always do or what we think would be cool, because that's where our head's at and we're in the trends of the fun stuff. But really, if it's engineers in the room, what they might think is the coolest thing about the event is when you serve them Caesar salad, and instead of putting the cheese on it, you put a little block of Parmesan in a mini grater, and they got to grate the cheese themselves because they like to build things, right? Like, that might have been the highlight for them, even though you spent 3 times your budget that you should have on your welcome reception where you had flying, trapeze artists, right? It's understanding that when you think about what you want to attend and why, that's what your attendees
so
thinking
your
about
clients,
too.
right? And kind of putting that mindset. And I think that's important as we're developing events around events, right? We're developing kind of these smaller opportunities of, client impact moments that are already attending these big shows, but they have very specific business needs. It's really understanding what their needs are and then crafting that kind of more micro moment at that attendance level, and giving them the opportunity to really like focus in on things that they're going to care about, and make those impactful moments that are going to really mean something to them.
Make it personal.
Make it personal. Yeah. No, I think that's a great takeaway. So I think the macro versus micro, it's a conversation we can continue having in terms of how we decide to attend events, how we encourage our clients to attend our events or attend events that we're hosting, in conjunction with these bigger conferences. So it's definitely something that I'm glad we kind of started scratching the surface on.
Yeah.
And I'd like to close it out as we always do. And I think, we might have a good confession moment. Maybe, Kara, I think you said you had some things you've been hearing around.
I was reminded of something last night. So we are actually at PCMA, and we are recording from Convening Leaders this year.
Woohoo!
And I was attending the different local chapter receptions that take place on the first night, and they do this every year. Each individual chapter does this like 1 or 2 hour reception that leads into the first opening night impact.
Kara was doing her party hopping, per usual.
Per usual. Her networking.
It's important work. Somebody's got to do it. So as I was heading to the chapter reception last night, a memory came to me of about 5 or 6 years ago when I was the past president of the New England chapter. So really no longer super involved in the chapter reception and the planning of it. But for whatever reason, the chapter president that was incoming wasn't able to be at the reception. And she had planned it. And she had said to me, Kara, can you go a half hour early and just make sure it's set? Here's the location, here's the information. This was in San Francisco. I showed up to the event. The venue was closed. It did not exist. I'm not sure if she signed a contract, who she signed it with, who she spoke to and said they would be there. Finally got a maintenance guy who was like literally sweeping the floors to open the door. And he was like, no, we're not open today. There is no event happening in here today. And I had to literally... And we had people arriving. I mean, we were like 15 minutes. By the time I got some of the doors open and whatever, like we were in arrival mode. And we had this like one lollipop sign to tell people they've arrived to the right location. So I literally look around and I see like a steakhouse right across the way with like a lounge area. And you could see like the windows of it from the corner where the entrance to the other venue was. Mm-hmm. So I walked in and I was like, how busy are you right now? And they're like, it was like 4 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. They're like, not our prime time. So I'm like, I'm opening a tab, throwing sliders, throw in whatever your appetizers are that are shareable. Like I need like $500 worth of appetizers out pronto. And whenever people get here, just let them order on my tab. Let me know if it gets to, whatever it was, like $2,500 or higher, and we'll reevaluate at that time. But it's only 1 hour. What can you do? And they were like, this is awesome. I made their week, I think. But at the end of the day, I had to have somebody standing on the curb as people arrived to the wrong venue, or to what they thought was the right venue, and shoot them across the street to what ended up being, in my opinion, a better really venue anyways, because it was a high-end steakhouse that they got to have espresso martinis and other things. True. Where, they were originally planning on some cheese and crackers.
Thank goodness for that one lollipop sign that could walk them across the street and tell them that they're actually at the right place.
Have to be stuck on the curb for that lollipop sign. That was not the highlighted job of the night, but it was a volunteer position, to say the least.
Nothing like some event planning on the fly.
Yes.
So love it.
So always double check your venues open. Lesson.